Board, call it to order. Can you please take the roll call? Teresa.
Hey, Mayor Jones.
Here.
Kill.
Here.
Horn.
Here.
Bowen.
Present.
Horacek. Yes. Mattson and Schilling are absent with notice. Planning and zoning, Randall.
Here.
Anderson.
Here.
Graham.
Here.
Kudel.
Here.
Espinoza. Here. Jackson.
Here.
And Miles is absent with notice.
All right, do we have any additions or approval of the agenda for this meeting?
Motion to approve.
I'll second.
Any discussion?
No, you don't.
I suspect, do I have to call everybody on this deal?
Or you can just all yay.
All in favor? Oh, any opposed? Okay, good, thank you.
It's a non-expenditure, so you don't have to do roll call.
Oh, whatever, I
Yeah,
just
you
love I just love calling off all their names, it keeps me sharp.
So do we.
That way it's fun.
In our
If it's
meetings,
not
so do
fun,
we,
you won't
so don't
play.
worry.
Yep, yeah, I usually do.
All right, the reason for this meeting tonight is to have a TIF, Tax Increment Financing Information Session. We have
That's
invited Quinn Reimers from, what is your company again?
Collier Securities.
Colliers Securities. Quinn has worked on a couple TIFs that are one in place and one ongoing in Hartford, and we asked him to come and give us a little information meeting. He's got a slideshow, and then the main part of this is we're going to open it up for questions, so you guys can answer questions. Oh yeah, you better call Tom.
Just thought they
Well,
started right sitting there waiting, going, where are you guys?
Really.
What's Tom for? What do we need him for?
Well,
I'm just asking.
he wanted to be in,
Okay.
yeah. He's got bills to pay.
Yeah.
He's got billable hours to meet before.
I was just gonna say the billable hours.
First thing we'll hear.
There's no point in having one.
Hey there, Tom. Can you
Hey,
hear us?
Tom.
Good evening.
All right, we're going to turn it over to Quinn, so we're ready to go.
Okay, I'm going to mute mine so I'm not having background noise.
Can I do that whenever I'm talking to you? Oh, wait. That's not
You
right.
can mute yourself, but then you won't really be talking to it.
All right, go ahead, Quinn.
Alright, I'm Quinn Reimers, not Toby Morris, that's my boss. He is in Rochester for medical reasons here, so. There's Toby's background. He's serves as the senior advisor to the governor's office right now, and TIFs have become a huge part of our, what we do. We do them all over the state, every day. So, TIF, it's pretty self-explanatory. It's a huge economic development tool that's come along for various different reasons. You can use TIFs for so many different things. So there's two things to a TIF, a TID and a TIF. The TID with the D is the boundaries itself. So, you got a block, a city block, a red line around that is your TIF, or your tax increment district. Your district has to be contiguous, so you can't have a block, and then three blocks later, you can't just pretend like it's the same thing. So. A TIF, is the financing that results from the taxes that come from that tax increment district. And also, if there's no stupid question. TIFs are kind of confusing, so please throw them at me if you have any questions. Why would you do a TIF? You might have areas within the city that are, rough or undeveloped. Especially anymore, the financing structure with any sort of development within a city, county, wherever it may be, has become outrageously expensive. Interest rates, inflation, everything with that. TIFs are huge to help offset those costs for a developer or a city or county. So, excuse me. So, a big thing here with the TIF is the base value. Excuse me, I got like a sinus infection, so. The blue line here, you'll notice, the blue line of this 600,000 is, say, a bare piece of land. That's the base value of the land. That 600,000 is the value that will be taxed for the life of that TIF. the taxing entities will still receive that amount. So the taxing entities will still receive that 600,000 worth of taxes. It's not just 600,000, that's the valuation of it. That gray line here is the improvements. So typically when you have a TIF, the first 2 years, pretty stagnant because, you know, you're not building anything. Those are the years you are building stuff. And so the way we do it is they're built, and they're assessed, and then they're payable. So it's pretty much usually a 2 to 3 year window where no tax increment really comes into play. So as you'll see here in year 3, your actual improvements to this property are starting to be realized. The developer, the TIF itself, is going to receive the difference here between the blue and the top of the gray. So this is, you know, what is this, $1 million? The developer's receiving a $400,000 increment off of this, just this example here. So this, you know, with a lot of the cities around the state are typically doing more of a, what would you call it, like a
Guideline.
Guidelines.
Yeah, we just did ours.
yeah. Will it benefit the city? Will it benefit the county? You know, you have to look at it, will this project benefit? The but-for test, will this project happen but for the TIF? If the answer is yes, then yeah, think about what we're doing here, if that's worth it. So what amount can the TIF sustain? So that, with that question would be, you know, over the course of the full 20 years of a TIF, what amount will it generate? You know, where along the lines are those in relation with the project cost? So if you have $3 million worth of project costs, but your with your TIF projections show you can produce $20 million, you probably don't need to do a $20 million TIF. Rather, it's a healthy TIF that can do easily $3 million. So, you know, a lot of developers will say, well, I've got, this thing will pay $20 million, why can't I have a $20 million TIF? Well, you've only got $3 million in project costs. So that's how we, you know, there's a lot more variables to it, but it's just how we look at it for sure. And then the classification of the TIF. So you have affordable housing, economic development, industrial, and local. Local is a big one. That one, you know, we'll get into that here in a second, but economic development can be commercial, housing, really anything. It just has to have a commercial aspect in it.
Quinn?
Yes, sir.
This Tom, but in the economic development, there has to be a commercial component to it. Is that
Yep.
a fair statement?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, okay. Just want to make sure that the council easily understood that.
Absolutely. Yep, economic development, it, you know, it can have housing, it can have whatever it is. It has to have a commercial aspect to it. Affordable housing, that's just like a regular housing development, no commercial. That's where you are limited to that South Dakota housing first-time home buyer. That's lot sales plus the house included. Right now, the affordable housing first-time home buyer is $410,000. So it's it's up there, but yeah, that's just how things have progressed over the last few years. So, and then industrial, obviously industrial development, light industrial, whatever the zoning may be. So, will the TIF raise your taxes? That's where we come into play with the local one, the local TIF. So there's a state aid formula that it supplements the affordable housing, economic development, and industrial TIFs for the school. The local, it raises the taxes for the local tax base to cover what is being missed out by that school district. So that's, you know, we typically avoid the local TIFs. They're obviously, they can be a political nightmare, and honestly just a nightmare as a whole, so.
So-
We typically run away from those ones.
When planning and zoning, when we were discussing the TID for the ASM, no, for Maple Pass, adding Maple Pass. And I think it was that one, wasn't it, Mark?
No,
I think it was Windsor.
it was Windsor.
Windsor
Oh,
Grove
on
was the
shoulder.
second phase.
And we had the superintendent here,
Mm-hmm.
and he over and over and over told us that TIFs take money away from the school district, but they're for them, that they're okay with it, but it takes money away from the school district.
Takes away from their capital.
So they don't receive the growth that's happening. They're still in that, remember that blue line you grabbed?
Correct.
They still receive that. They just don't receive the growth as long as that TIF's alive. So, 10 years,
Okay.
it may be. So yeah, they definitely don't receive the growth, but their special ed formula, the special education, general fund is all held harmless.
And I think that was his point, that the general fund will still be made whole.
Yeah, for
by it.
sure.
But he was saying something, wasn't it, that basically their capital improvement fund isn't made
CPI
whole?
plus growth is what they receive, and I think their growth by legislation
So just like our
is just
CPI,
half
they're not
by-
getting that growth, that's
Right.
what hurts their capital
Right.
improvement.
Right, exactly, so they get CPI plus growth, which is capped to, I think it's 3%.
But they
3% now, yeah.
they just don't get the growth that's generated in the TIF.
Correct,
But they get their growth that the legislature allows, even if the TIF didn't occur.
yep, or the $1,400
I think
student.
that's the way it is.
Right.
Or it's like some
Yeah, and they still get their
lump sum
student
of student.
reimbursement, so.
Right.
And then you look at a housing TIF, what we always say is, more housing, more roofs is more students, ideally, but you just never know, but that's your intention is, you bring in a different population of people, so. Pretty much just talked about that one. So yeah, steps involved, I'm sure most of you guys already know what's involved with the TIF, the business plan, who it is, what they are, when they're gonna do it, and why. What are the improvements? What is it? Like, are they doing a housing development? Are they just the streets? Is it grading? Is it everything? What are the expenditures? How much are gonna cost? Is it a real engineer's estimate? Anymore, we've started to see, we make the developer typically go get a letter from the bank and saying, hey, this is a feasible, this guy's good for it, and it's feasible, and so just to add a little bit more validity to the whole deal, and the amount the TIF cannot exceed, that's typically, just one number that we always end up with, that's in the TIF plan. So like, the plan says $4 million, that's the number that we intend to use. You can go up on that over the course of time. Within the first 5 years, you can increase your actual TIF amount by 35%. It cannot go higher than that, or you have to reset your base, which is counter to it, so it doesn't really make any benefit.
So explain that again. So they have their 4 million, but
Yeah,
they can,
so-
within 5 years, they can go over is 35%? Is that
Yeah,
how I read that?
right.
Okay.
Yeah, so, you said, let's just say $1 million for easy money. Million, you can, in that first 5 years, which is first of all, you're supposed to be, all your improvements are supposed to be completed within that first 5.
Yep.
In that first 5, Department of Revenue is gonna say, you're done after that, right? You can't increase this TIF. If you increase it over the 35%, you have to reset your base. So essentially, you lose all of the improvements you just did. So you don't want to do that. So yeah. I guess this is essentially what I did. These are all project costs we can throw in there. It's very broad. Essentially, what you cannot throw in a TIF is the vertical building itself. Pretty much everything else is allowable to an extent, right? I mean, there's, at some point in time, you gotta say, okay, hold on. Capital costs, public works, road, water, electrical, interest, land,
On the
engineering.
public works side of things, could it be as broad as parks? Or would that not be included because it's vertical?
Parks. So like if a developer donated or the city wanted to develop, yeah, absolutely.
Could be included, the cost of that could be
In
included?
the cost, you see now, a park isn't gonna generate any tax increment.
Right.
But you can include it in the cost, for sure.
Okay.
Like, it's like,
Yeah, you just don't have the
a lot of developers anymore donating a bunch of land for parks and schools and whatnot, so, and, we can absolutely include that.
I mean, it could be 11,000.
Well, could do that.
How does that interest piece work? Because you've got a couple of years before you see anything, and then with the discretionary formula, that takes quite a while to get some traction on your.
Well, you better, if you're writing the TIF and you're doing the TIF, you better waive the discretionary formula, because it doesn't really, it works against you. So if you're waiving the discretionary formula, I think you either do one or the other, really. If you want to build a commercial property, either write a TIF or ask for a discretionary formula. Because, I mean, they're not paying taxes that are going to benefit the TIF. And the interest component, there's a lot of different ways you can do that. It's been abused in the past where people are using 10, 15%, and that's, obviously pretty egregious. So, we typically say, okay, you got 4 million project costs, we put it in the amortization schedule, and say the amount's 6 million at the end of it, that's the TIF amount. We don't keep track of the interest over time. We just will say, because it is a nightmare administratively to do that. If you just say, okay, 4 million in project costs, 2 million in interest, you have $6 million TIF, and then, once that 6 million's been received, it's all done. Some people they'll keep track of that interest, and it's super hard to get a grasp on that. Good question.
And Quinn, all of that, the interest and capital improvements, et cetera, could all be part of the $6 million. What you're saying is, if you said it's a $6 million TIF, once you hit that, it's done. Or if you hit the years that are approved by the council, it's done. And the costs beyond that are on the developer, correct?
Absolutely, yeah. So legally, a TIF can go 20 years. Council can say, absolutely not. We want that to go no more than 10. And you just put that in a developer agreement and say, their TIF is, as a council, you want a 10-year TIF, no more than $4 million. They either received their 4 million or 10 years came too fast. So that's pretty much the gist of it. And at the end of the day, that's all in the developer agreement. That's a good question. This is just an example of project costs. All of these are essentially eligible costs. This is a Kimball, I think it was the elevator. So I can't see my mouse at all, okay. Actual costs, 8.4, TIF requested, 2 million. So, I mean, that's typically how we do it, just kind of show hey, these are the actual project costs, and we're only requesting this much. Sometimes it's fairly similar. Like just the adoption process. You go from here, we're doing a study session, or there's other study sessions. You then go into the planning and zoning process, where the Planning and Zoning Commission passes this or recommends the boundaries to the commission. Then the commission, council, then approves the TIF. And then we go into what's called the developer agreement, which at the end of the day is the master of the whole TIF. The TIF plan itself is pretty much just pretty pictures, kind of telling you what the plan is. This is what we're going to do. The developer agreement has, the teeth in it, tells you the timelines, the project costs, the TIF amount, all the responsibilities of the developer. So, yep, so here, most important part of the TIF, binding document spells out the terms and conditions. If this agreement is broken, the city doesn't need to pass on increment. So, you know, if you're not doing what you said you're going to do, there's no reason for you to receive increment on that, so.
And keep in mind the plan and developer agreements all, whatever the planning and zoning ultimately and ultimately the council determine is appropriate for that project.
Right.
So the city controls all of that, and just works with the developer to come up with some sort of agreeable terms on length, size, et cetera, of the TIF.
Right. Yeah, this is essentially what I just went through briefly. You know, typically, we hardly do a ton of, shouldn't say hardly do a ton, but we rarely do city TIFs, especially when there's a developer involved. It's usually developers hold on to that one, so, you know, it's just, this is all stuff I already went through here.
The other thing, Quinn, that we want to make sure we touch on, the amount of the TIF when it's a developer, what I call a developer TIF, does not obligate the city on any tax dollars or any debts associated with the project. The city is simply acting as a conduit for those funds to come to the city, and the city turns around and disperses those back to the developer.
Yes.
So it's not counting against city debt, and it's not a legal obligation of the city. If the TIF funds that are generated are insufficient to support the amount that is requested, that will be upon the developer to repay any loan that they use to finance the improvement. So the city is not putting its credit or tax dollars on the line to satisfy any obligations that are attached to the TIF.
It's really a hold harmless.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Right.
There's
Yeah.
no liability, it's an annual appropriation, right? So, that's typically what we've done with all of ours.
In the developer agreement, it'll basically say it's a grant that the city issues on an annual basis for the TIF dollars that come in. It's an annual grant back to the developer to assist in the repayment of those costs.
Correct. Same stuff we just talked about. Projects and developers' name, like I said, there's no liability on the city's end when the developer is involved. So when the TIF expires, if there's no debt, and then there is no TIF, right? So that's one way. There's another way. There's several ways you could do it. There's no debt, so then that means you got to keep there's a lot more communication where the developers in the bank, in the city are involved heavily on that, saying, so the city says, hey bank, is there any debt left on this TIF? He said, no, there hasn't been debt on it for 2 years. Well, now you got an annuity for the developer. So that's why there's no debt, there's no TIF. The other way is if you just do it straight up, it's over the course of 10 years, you got $4 million TIF, you've divvied out $4 million to this developer, TIF is expired. Or if you have a timeline within that developer agreement, that's 10 years. 10 years comes by and you've only divvied out $5 to the developer, sorry, it's just how it is, to the developer rather, so, yeah, that's on them. Just stuff I went through here, and as municipal advisors, we always try and keep, the city in the driver's seat. We represent the developer in pretty much every case. We have an obligation to say, hey, say you are in the driver's seat, we would love to work with you on this one. It needs to benefit you as well as the developer. So, you know, you guys always need to be in the driver's seat with your TIFs. There's a few cities out there that are not. Yeah, so hardest part of TIF is the projections. They're hypothetical projections, right? You can't tell. You're not going to know what the developer is going to do tomorrow. You know, it's the TIF is, you know, it's development, it's fluid, things change. So that is the most difficult part of the TIF for sure. Here's the MOU. I've done one here with you guys here earlier. I don't know when that was, to be honest. Probably too long ago. So, you know, MOU, we use a lot of MOUs, so, you know, we can kind of an introduction to the project and say, hey, this is non-binding agreement, but here's our project, and hopefully, you know, you'll allow us to come back at a future date and we can move forward on this. That's really what the MOU is. It also helps the developer go to their bank and start moving that process along a little faster. So saying we've talked to the city, they've got an MOU done with us, so we just can move on from there. Developer negotiations, you know, this is all stuff you might know already. You know, you can negotiate everything within a TIF. You know, it's the amount, whether you want there to be $1 million or you want there to be $5 million, whether you want to be involved with it, whether you want like a percentage of the TIF, whether you want timelines within the TIF. It's totally within, you know, the city's control. Obviously, a developer, a non-pushy, non-shabby developer is probably broke, but you know how they are. So that is the end of my slideshow. So 20 slides. Any questions? I know there's a ton there and probably.
So since we talked a little bit, Gwen, when you first got here, I'll ask the question it's been in the news a lot. So they're in the process of legislatively freezing valuations on properties. So I asked that question. So how does that affect this deal? So.
And it's just on housing, right? It's everyone's, over the last, I don't know how long, 8 years or more, I mean, property values have significantly increased.
Yeah.
They're not going away. It's that they're trying to slow this insane increase that's happened. But then you bring up a good point where this, after that, whatever, because in 5 years,
5 years.
5 years goes away, do they automatically just boom, adjust for the freeze, or, you know, that's just economics that we're never going to know, but that, it's going to slow the valuation, and that probably won't necessarily freeze it, it's going to slow it significantly, probably to a percentage.
The other thing to remember, Arden,
Yeah.
that in the TIF, it's all new value.
Correct.
So that shouldn't have as big an impact in the TIF district. It does, obviously, in the city's perspective, that has some issues, but
Right.
the TIF is all going to be based upon increase in valuation and new construction. So.
Right.
You know, a lot of the cases, what we'll do, and this is kind of an example of where it would affect a TIF, is, you know, that first year of increment, say it's in 2028, that first year increment, what we'll do is, you know, we'll add from there on out, and we have been doing this, is we'll add like a 1%, 2%, 3% increase every single year, because it's just kind of the nature where we're sitting at. So that's, you know, how we come up with that. That would affect that, and that's in the situation. We would probably wouldn't increase them at all. So, yeah.
So I'll ask one more question, then we'll let everybody else have that, Jay. So the other thing we discussed was money for the city.
Mhm.
And you said we've had discussions regarding half of the lot sales, or whatever it may be. You guys are leaning more toward going to a set percentage rather than going to that half of the lot sales.
Yeah, like I said, everything's negotiable, right? I mean, it's just one of those deals. We think, you know, once you get into that half your lot sales and half of the valuation of those lots that were split with the city, you're not split with the city, but rather taken off your TIF. We think it's going to be an administrative nightmare, just to, continuously knocking that TIF amount down versus, okay, why not just, here's the city, here's 5%, 10%, whatever it may be. City receives that, and, if this is an administrative cost, is it, other public works that you have intentions of doing with connection to this? It doesn't really matter. And we've told you this before, Mayor. Brookings, they're becoming increasingly difficult to, they're great, I love working with them, they're awesome. But they pretty much start right at 50% of your TIF request. So then you just kind of got to work them down, but yeah, there's a lot of cities that are starting to throw that in there, that percentage.
Can you, I guess I'm not following that part, so make that very simple for what you're saying with the 50%.
Yeah, so
I guess,
we set a $10 TIF. This is ultra simple, I apologize. $10 TIF. Developer is going to receive, $9. The city is going to receive $1 put into the general fund.
Right.
yeah, I think that kind of leads into, I've been somewhat vocal on TIFs, and I guess I'm going to play the bad guy a little bit, just because these things are going to be, I think we're just, I think, just seeing the pattern that we're just like, we haven't even seen what's going to be unleashed here in the next few years of TIFs.
For sure.
You know what I mean?
They could be going away.
They could be.
Stick with that too
Yeah,
much here,
yeah,
so.
exactly. I think they can be used and abused, and I guess in my mind, let's look at a real life example with the project off of 38 there, the Windsor Group. And I'm not putting them on the spotlight, but that's a real life example. I know this, and this is public. They have a large part of that land sold to a big multifamily builder.
Sure.
It's public. One of the concerns I have, and whether it's with them or with ASM, I don't know if I'm saying that right, Assam, is it Assam or ASM? ASM. So, and I've been around this TIF talk for probably 3 years now. So let's say they go and they develop that Windsor Group land, you know what I'm talking about probably. Right?
The multifamily stuff?
Well, it's right off the 38 there.
Mhm.
Let's use ASM's land. So let's say they develop that. What I'm trying to wrap my mind around is, obviously the city has to upkeep those roads, the infrastructure. It's 20 years
Yep.
that the city really isn't receiving any revenue for maintenance, upkeep, and those things.
Mhm.
And so that's one of the downsides of it from a taxpayer perspective. Yet, correct, am I understanding that
They didn't
right?
necessarily pay for it to be put in though.
No, but I'm talking about the maintenance. for
Sure.
that, right?
Well, sure, but then you're talking a full 20 years, the number you're using, and I know, and you guys as a city have also had that discussion where we don't necessarily like 20 years. And
Right.
that's,
Yeah, every developer is every developer is gonna say, we're gonna pay it off in 10, yeah, but to keep it simple, and I wanna make sure I'm understanding this, because I feel like there's times where I understand tips and there's times where I don't know what the hell if I do or don't, but the one thing that I'm concerned about is the tax burden with TIFs. As our city grows, our need for resources to upkeep these new areas
Sure.
with hiring maintenance people, with chip sealing, all of these things. And then at the same time, right now, and I was knocking on doors 2.5 years ago, getting names on my petition to run for city council, and I hate to say it, but a lot of the older people I was talking to, they were concerned about property taxes years ago. And so if I'm sitting up here, and we've got to expand our, city resources, because we have this growth, so that can be a positive thing. It seems like to me that, like one of the downsides of the TIF would be on taxpayers to an extent of that city.
Well, that's where he just was explaining, Sean, that we would add money in for the city.
And
That's,
so I like the negotiation of that, because
And-
yeah.
he said it 2 or 3 times. The thing we gotta remember, we will the city can be in the driver's seat on this deal.
Ultimately, yes.
When we put together that developer agreement, we are not gonna just let them, oh yeah, we're not gonna take any money. If we need money, the Windsor Group is a prime example. We negotiated for the inclusion of that road. I mean, I think that thing probably would have stumbled, let's just say that. But with the inclusion of that road for the city, it made that thing tolerable for us to look at it and take it on.
Yeah, can we go back to the slide with the blue bar and?
Yes.
I think it's important to remember that not, so remind us again what there isn't, the whole project isn't tax-free, correct?
No, so for a single-family development, first of all, you won't even know you're in a TIF district because you're paying your taxes as you would normally.
Right.
Your taxes just come from the county to the city, then they get divvied out by the city, to the developer. That 600,000 that this blue line is stuck at here is the total amount that property was worth when we did the TIF. There was no improvements whatsoever. That's gonna stay the same the whole time. Give or take. We've actually noticed that it's changed a little bit. It's gone up, not that much, but enough that you can see. But that base value is gonna stay the same the entire time. The city and the county, any taxing entity is still gonna receive their taxes based on that 600,000, right?
Like a base.
They would have.
That's their
Like a
base.
basis.
Yes.
Yep.
I mean, if that's the amount that you would receive if they had done nothing. Right. There's a point where, there's maintenance that comes in with when doing something, right? But then, that's where a lot of these cities, as we've discussed, have come in and said, hey, well, we want a little piece of this then because we're gonna have to maintain your project. So
Right.
that's something definitely to think about, and for really any of your tests.
So they're making a payment to the bank and making a payment to the city as a way to negotiate it, a TIF. Is that simple enough? Is that?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, the TIF is just there as a piece. It's not supposed to be the whole thing.
Right.
If they're doing homes, I mean, like I said, they're not paying for the construction of the actual home either. It's literally just for the infrastructure, the site work and stuff like that. I think I didn't answer your question. For the first 2 years, the bank, typically with those first 2 years, the developer's gonna have to sell those lots to keep up with that capitalized interest. Over the course of those first 2, maybe even 3 to 4 years, however long
So
that.
the developer's paying that on pocket.
Oh, yeah,
Right.
for sure. That's not
Right.
just something, so we have this weird little calculation where, you have to sell this many lots a year to keep up with this capitalized interest, because, it's probably at 7.5%, 8%, so they've got to sell however many lots based on their loan, so.
It doesn't really give them the opportunity to just sit back.
No, and then that makes them get out of bed
Yeah,
more.
yeah.
So they're gonna have to get up and do something.
Right.
And there's an incentive. The developer has a huge liability with this, with a tip like this. They've got to get out of bed and do something and make progress. Because if they don't have any increment, they're not gonna receive anything from the city. So, and it's not the city's fault, it's not,
The TIF is still due, right? I mean, they still gotta make.
Well, their payment is still due to the bank.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
Their payment's still due.
Exactly.
No matter what
If
happens.
they sit on their hands, or if they sell, 50 lots a year,
Correct.
they gotta make a payment
Yep.
on the TIF.
you're not on the hook for paying them nothing. That's their fault.
Yep.
But I would say my personal feeling on this has changed even since we signed this MOU
Yeah, I would
way
agree.
back. Because I'm looking at this deal completely different on time frame. I think we're gonna shorten, that time frame's gonna get shortened
100%.
on every one that we go forward. 20 years just seems to be
It's long.
way too long.
Yeah.
I mean, you gotta, because we always talk about encumbering the council to deals. Well, you're signing a TIF that's 20 years long, you're gonna be 4 councils away by the time that thing comes to an end, everybody's gonna say, what the hell, what did they do? And I think you gotta shorten that time frame so it's manageable within your structure, your government structure. Right?
So,
The other thing, and this is going back to Sean's question a little bit on that, was besides the tax dollars, the property tax dollars, the incentive for utilizing a TIF, that there's going to be other benefits that the city and community realize from the growth.
Correct.
Whether that's students in the school district, sales tax.
Right.
The property tax is a component, obviously, but there's those other benefits that come with growth, that on a temporary basis, property taxes get utilized elsewhere, but down the road, they're gonna be there forever, so.
yeah, you actually bring up another point, and I'm looking for some data that would point to, right, does the sales tax, does the growth in numbers actually, is it actually a positive thing in lessening that burden for other people? That's, it's nice to talk about. No, I mean,
Yeah,
I think it's
I get
nice to
it.
talk about is like, hey, we're gonna do this project, we're gonna build these apartment complexes, that's all great. But until, I think it's really hard to articulate the potential, and I'm talking on the negative side of this, because all I hear is a positive side of TIFs a lot of the time. But I completely understand what you're saying, and I'm gonna play the bad guy in these TIFs but I'm not saying I'm against them. But there's also negative side effects that come with growth. There are. And there's positive sides of that. And what I don't know is, like what he's saying, like what Tom is saying, is is there actual real data that we can point to that the sales tax, the growth in the school district, is that a good thing? Can our school district handle growth?
Dr. Knight say there was only less than 2 kids from that apartment complex?
Something like that, yeah.
And, as a school district grows, guess what happens? You build more schools. Guess what happens? Taxpayers get burdened with that all the time. So I think I guess my encouragement for the P&Z, for us, is to just really think smart, right? I mean, because it is nice. I do want Hartford to grow, but also I want us to think, think
Exactly.
about it. Can I add one more? Then I'll shut up. after
Okay,
this.
I'm gonna hold you to that.
Well, you can try, but,
Don't shut up, don't shut up.
so, you know what, I might pause here and open up.
Can I interject here then?
Please do,
See,
yes.
There's a negative of not growing, and that is costs will continue to climb, and they're going to be shared by a smaller group, right? If you say let's just say growth is bad. and
I didn't say that.
But you said.
You're using that for an example. I said
It's coming
smart
with some
growth.
negative, it's coming
Smart
with some
growth.
negative. Everybody talks about the positives, but what about the negative? Well, if you don't have growth, and we stayed the same population size, all of the expenses to maintain our community aren't going to stay static.
Right.
So we are all going to have to pay a larger and larger
Yeah,
share.
and I agree with that. That's why I'm not against growth, but smart growth. So I think that there's a middle line there. So,
Can you give us an example of where we've had not smart growth here?
no, I'm throwing out I guess,
Yeah.
if we wind back to our
Hypothetical,
conversation,
kind
if
of,
we wind
yeah.
back to what we said though, is that
Yeah.
I never said that growth was bad.
Okay, fair point.
Okay.
Okay. I think the other question I asked you, Quinn, earlier was, the present pool of governor candidates are all talking about
Yeah.
property tax going away. What does that do to this deal?
Well, that's unlikely, right? I mean, everyone.
If you watch their ads, you would think it's not,
Well, I mean, you said property tax, right?
yeah.
Yeah, come on. I mean, first of all, you as a city, that's massive. The school, huge, water districts, anything, any
Yeah.
taxing entity, where else are they gonna tax?
Correct.
Even in states with income taxes, they still have property taxes.
Correct.
Yep.
Yeah.
So,
Right. Yeah, so, and back to your comment on the growth with needing a new school, I mean, if you needed a new school, now all of a sudden you've got, you're working on like $70 to $100 million worth of new
Construction?
construction, or it's invested into the community, and especially with these other two projects that you've already had, with this new TIF. The first one, that one's probably close to done, maybe, right?
First TIF?
Yeah.
That just started 2 years ago, man.
I was just gonna say,
You
aren't
got
we
some
only two
developers
years?
I
that-
know, I thought the housing was almost done with it, the construction on the home.
Again,
Not quite, okay. No, I'm just using whatever, for example, TIFs add a huge value to your community regardless,
Yeah.
You're not just building a new school off of yesterday's valuation, it's,
That TIF did bring subsidized housing to the community, right? Subsidized multifamily. It brought
Workforce housing.
Sure,
But
yeah.
and they're, I don't know, not that the others are not quality, but it's quality, should be bringing quality people to the community, right?
Absolutely.
So you guys, anybody else got any questions? Because we got about 10 minutes and then we got to turn this deal over to Tony.
I've got one more question that I remember.
Okay.
I gave up the floor. So one thing that well, hey, you know what? I came to a meeting
I
on
know.
a Tuesday, man.
I know.
I told you I was
Hey, I
gonna
come
be
to
here.
meetings on Tuesdays
Yeah,
all the time.
yeah. So,
Okay, go.
So two quick things here, as quick as I can make it. So there's always a but-for test.
Naturally, yeah.
And in your example, how long you been doing the TIFs for? How many years approximately?
Roughly.
Okay. Are there any examples, whether on the state side? Because these TIFs have to be ran through the state. I mean, there's an overview process.
No, you guys are essentially the TIF police. I mean,
When
they-
was the last time a project was turned down for a TIF by the city because the developer didn't need the money?
Didn't need the money?
Because the developer has to show proof that they actually need money, that, hey, this is my understanding, that projects will not happen
Sure, yeah, that's
but for a TIF.
Not usually, ever, really. I mean, 3M is doing, you know what I mean?
Okay.
So, I mean, there's.
They're kind of a small
They're
company.
they're useful, they're useful, right?
Yeah.
I mean, but for, this usually comes down to, do we need this gas station right here, or something like that? It usually comes down to that stuff. The but for financially, we have a developer in Belfouche right now, has probably $0 to his name, but he's got a $5.5 million TIF. He's never gonna, we just passed that like not long ago. And we didn't realize that this had come up as of recently, he had no money.
Didn't pass
Well,
this.
until he talked to his bank and they're like, oh, but they're not gonna see. any
Make sure that's on our checklist, right?
development.
Obviously, he wouldn't be able to do the project without the TIF.
Right.
So he qualifies for the but-for, because if you don't give me a $5 million TIF, I can't build this project.
Well, you're not getting the $5 million today.
You're not gonna be able to borrow the money either.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's true.
Right,
Yeah,
he's only getting the money
you gotta pay that
as he
2-3
sells.
years of
I mean,
cost.
it's
I mean,
a,
that's, if you gotta put that infrastructure in, you've gotta float that. and then-
No,
Right.
I follow all that, but I'm saying it's,
Yeah.
you take, your example, the guy at Belfouche has no money, and in Brookings, you got 3M using a TIF.
Yeah, exactly.
I
I
mean,
mean, it's
from
all
one
up
side to
it's
the
all
other.
for interpretation.
Correct.
for
Who
sure.
needs the money more to make that happen?
but the $5.5 million TIF is what he took to the bank and said, look what I, possibly.
Yeah, that doesn't mean that.
They're gonna give him the money,
Yeah.
but that's what he's floating that.
Uh-huh.
To
Right,
that point, when we're looking at these in the future, it would be good to have some sort of a letter.
Split from the bank.
yeah.
supporting
100%.
that
So
somebody would do that.
did we add that into our guidelines? I
I think
think
so,
it is. So you guys seen our guidelines. So we're kind of, to answer your question, we're kind of at a tip. We can't answer some of your questions because we don't know. We're just putting some of these guidelines into place. This thing's gonna look different in the next 3 to 5 months, I would say.
Well, if you have a hypothetical where you have a developer who hasn't really moved on a development, right? And you created TID for the said development, and then they come forth with a TIF for X dollars, why would they want to encumber themselves with more debt that they have no intention of actively attempting to pay off? It would seem like it would kick a development off of dead center. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, for sure, right? You're saying, why have a TIF and then go to the bank and do nothing with it?
Yeah, just,
Right.
right.
Why go through all the work borrowing the money and getting all the TIF and doing all of the work
And doing nothing?
and doing nothing?
They wanna see their-
Exactly, that's basically
They
what
wanna
you're
see their
saying.
balance sheet. you know.
Right,
Right, there's no benefit.
Yeah, exactly.
right.
That's one of
But,
the benefits of getting nothing going.
but that's the reason why cities like Hartford, Harrisburg, wherever, are not taking any of this on. It's all gotta be on the developer.
Yeah.
Because none of us can take that debt load, because we don't have to, no responsibility.
I don't think that service.
Fun nothing.
But the other side of that question that always ask you is, what about the developer that gets the whole project done and at the end comes in and says, oh, now I want a tip, so I can get $5 million back?
So, depends on where along the line you're at.
Huh?
Right? If you've just got streets, if there's like 3 streets and there's not a single house in there, and you haven't sold a lot yet, I guess, maybe that would work. But, if you've got a full neighborhood.
But how does that pass the but-for test? I can't do this
Exactly.
development unless I get this.
No, exactly. And
But the
there
development's all
lies
in.
your answer. It doesn't, you shouldn't, right? I mean, you shouldn't be done with the project and then come back and request the TIF. It just doesn't work. That shouldn't happen.
I think maybe, Sean, to alleviate some of your fear, I don't think, President Council, President Planning and Zoning, we're gonna do anything that's gonna be crazy. I don't envision that we're gonna do anything crazy. We're gonna watch out for this stuff. We're watching out for the taxpayers, because we're all taxpayers in this city too. I mean, I don't think we're gonna get to a point where we say, oh yeah, let's just, Harrisburg's put a moratorium on. They took so many on, they put a moratorium. We're not anywhere near to
I
that.
like your idea of putting a notice of timeline on that.
Oh, we're
I
gonna
like
short,
that.
yeah,
I
yeah.
like putting that,
Yeah.
like, if you can't pay this thing off in 10 years, don't even do a TIF. I mean.
I definitely think 20 is too long. You might be right.
what's
20
that?
is too long, I agree.
Yeah.
That's,
But you've gotta be ready to go vertical right away.
you gotta be ready. And really, but that's what Quinn said. You gotta have developers that get up out of bed in the morning and go to work.
Absolutely.
Because if you tighten that deal to 10 years, the clock's ticking.
The 20 years is really good.
You've
for
got 2 or
something
3
like-
that are burned out of the gate.
Yeah,
The 20 years is something that's really good for, like, say, Davidson County, the soybean processor.
yeah.
I mean, they're worth something $1 billion. We did one for them, they got $25 million TIF. That's where it's kind of nice to have that, right? That 20 years. It's an incentive for a huge company to come in, or like Lake Norden, where the cheese.
The cheese plant, yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
another
And I know
situation.
20 years on industrial makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On a,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
on a combo housing, small,
10.
commercial.
20
or-
years is way too long.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
currently,
yeah.
that project has 160 electricians on it. And so you think about the economic impact to that community.
Oh,
Lake
right.
Norton one does? No.
The one in
Oh, the
Mitchell.
one in Davidson County. That's just electricians.
Yeah.
You know, that's substantial. Can you imagine every convenience store in the, you know?
It's a lot of tax dollars.
What's that?
Imagine the owner of the electrical
That's a
company.
lot, that's a lot of Red Bull.
A lot of Red Bull and cigarettes.
Imagine the owner of the condo club.
Ah,
All right, anybody else got any questions for Quinn?
Yeah, what, you said there has to be a commercial component.
Yes,
Economic development.
yes,
Yeah.
for an economic development tip.
Okay, so how soon does this commercial element have to come into effect? I mean, I see one already that has no commercial yet.
It's really just gotta be the zoning aspect. Now, the city, I mean, this is all gonna come down to your developer agreement.
Agreement, right.
You gotta have a lot sold, I don't know what we talked about the one day. We have to have, there's a certain time period.
Yeah, we got-
developed And a letter of intent for it, or something along those lines, but realistically, it's just gotta be zoned.
So what does our agreement say?
I don't know what we have in our guideline. We have in our guidelines that you have so long before you have to.
if they want an economic development tip, they have to have a portion of it zoned,
Commercial,
yeah.
zone.
Being zoned and having a commercial
But it
establishment are
doesn't
two
say anything
different
about
things.
building timeframe, yeah. that's what I'm
Absolutely,
thinking about
it
that.
is. it's a big difference, you know. if you-
Yes,
We're gonna put.
you're right, Tim. Some of it
In
is,
the gas stations.
Because I understand that that commercial element is where we get our taxes from.
that's back to
not
the
part of
question
TIF.
Sean was asking. How do we
Yeah,
generate?
that's not part of the TIF.
Correct.
Those taxes go right back to the city.
City, all
So
that,
we
all that
need
sales
that
tax.
commercial
money.
element,
Yep.
like day one.
Sales tax.
Absolutely, that too.
Well, that's.
But property tax as well,
No, because
real estate.
the real estate property tax is still this value up here. Whether it's commercial, residential, whatever it is, it's.
Well, I thought the
blue-
commercial wasn't part of this.
No, that's blue.
That's for affordable, that's why we got in those the classifications, the industrial, the affordable housing, and the economic development. The economic development is the mixed use house, commercial, the affordable housing is strictly housing, and then the industrial, obviously, industrial.
But
So,
with that developer agreement, you have to identify which one
Correct.
right,
which one of those you're going after.
Yep.
and really,
That
it should
element
be
to me
those-
seems extremely important.
Yeah, I don't think you can remove it.
We could
I think it can be in
negotiate
there.
that.
I'm gonna say, that's something you should look at.
I think that should be
Agreement.
accelerated and put right up front.
But if that
Commercial.
parcel's sitting there currently undeveloped, and it stays undeveloped, what's the burden to the city?
None.
You know, the
Well,
burden.
like Tony just said, we have sales tax.
But the upside
all
is
the
we
other
get sales tax.
Growth.
But-
Yeah, if it develops, great. If
But
it
that
doesn't,
developer's got a
it's not
hustle to.
detriment,
employees
per
that
se.
are
Well, that's what I'm
putting out
saying.
of pocket,
That's
yeah.
what I'm saying,
The
yeah.
only financial benefit to the city on a commercial, and sometimes this can even be, what is that commercial? I mean, if it's a gas station generating sales tax because everything they sell at the gas station is taxable to the city, yes. Let's say that it's a wholesale building supply shop. How much, you guys that buy a wholesale supplier, how much city sales tax is on your invoices?
Depends on where it gets delivered.
Municipality you're in.
Yeah,
That's a
Where the
delivery
use, you know, where the,
point, yeah.
where it's used is.
or the,
So-
and that's the excise, is that excise, what they call excise?
Excise
That's
tax.
different,
Use
yeah.
tax.
It's used, it's.
Use tax.
But where I'm bringing up on that is there can be something that goes on that commercial ground that generates virtually no sales tax for the city.
Right, because the product
Units,
is,
they don't generate
point
anything.
of, the point of sale is
talking about
delivery.
storage
Yeah.
units.
Think black tie, for
Black
instance,
tie.
if they're delivering trusses to another community, then those sales tax dollars go to wherever they're delivered. Correct. Is my understanding.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
They probably paid sales tax on the raw goods here,
Correct, because that was
but they
delivered
missed,
here.
we missed out on the sales tax on the finished
On the end
product.
product.
On the end,
Yep.
Did they pay sales tax or were they sales tax exempt?
probably exempt, or they blew,
Resale?
black tie, did they get a
Maybe.
tax exempt on material that they, equipment that they bought for their plant? Don't we do
Sales
something?
tax.
Yeah,
We give them a rebate on that sales tax for the first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah,
But I would suspicion that wood coming into them, they're not paying sales tax on the raw lumber coming in.
Oh, yeah.
They've got a sales tax exemption on that for resale.
Because it's gonna,
right,
again, let's pass along to the. end
there,
user.
yeah,
Right. I mean, no different than us with fertilizer and
Lumber
chemical.
right,
We're tax exempt on all of that stuff because we collect the
So
sales
we're talking
tax
about like black tie
from the
trusses.
retail customer
Oh,
and
that,
resale
For
Trust
the
company,
resale,
yeah.
yeah.
with added value.
yeah.
but not for, I think he's talking about the new. Blue-
All right, anything else? Thank you, Quinn.
Yeah, absolutely, thanks for having me. I
Coming
know
down.
Presenting a TIF is pretty informal, it's probably the best way, just kind of leave it up for questions. So if you
Yeah,
have
no,
any other
really, yeah,
questions,
I'm glad that, we can
yeah,
get you in touch with him if you have any questions.
Can we get access to that slideshow? Like,
Yeah, I can
Give it
send
to
it
Teresa.
Send it to Teresa.
Email to me and I'll
She
get
can
that
email it off
to
to us,
them.
thank you.
So do we adjourn this joint and
Yep,
then
yeah,
Tony
adjourn.
goes back in?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Hey, Sean, you want to
Thank-
be around for our meeting too?
Yeah, call a meeting to order.
No, wait. Do a little switch around.
I'm